Pry open your third eye with me, your big-headed know-it-all, polymath Scott Spackey, and guests. Change your mind, change your life. Full episodes, services, knowledge, and all you'll ever need on scottspackey.com and life-mind.com. Are you ready?
Find me where the ocean collides with the sun.
Welcome back to Open Your Third Eye. With me, your host and polymath, Scott Spackey. With us again is Chloe, our producer and co-host. And we have our guest today. Chloe, you want to introduce a little bit what we'll be talking about and who we have with us?
Sure. Today, we're going to do a second portion of reviewing some chapters from Project Addiction. And today it's going to be spirituality in recovery. Again, we have with us Dana. He joined us last time for pleasure versus fulfillment. Thank you for joining us again, Dana. And let's get into it. We'll see what spirituality and recovery is all about.
This is actually a continuation from the same episode that we just recorded, because I can't create a true division between pleasure versus fulfillment and spirituality and recovery, because in many ways, if you want to have fulfillment over pleasure, spirituality is one of the grand ways to do so. And again, not denominational, not religiousness, but spirituality. However you define that, spirituality. So yeah, it is the continuation. We're going to elaborate on this more. I'm going to show the video chapter from Project Addiction. And again, I want to make it kind of clear that spirituality and recovery, while it comes from the Project Addiction video course and book, it's not exclusive to that. Recovery from addiction, trauma, crisis, personal development, personal growth, any way that you want to apply it. This is going to share and elaborate on how to apply spirituality, how to consider spirituality in recovery and in your personal development and growth. We all want something excessive. We all want something extreme. And what it comes down to, what I saw as a counselor dealing with crisis and trauma and family issues and existential issues, philosophical issues, that everyone that came to me, eventually what I saw is that you're not addicted to food and laziness or anything else. You just want something that has meaning in your life. You want to feel like life itself has value, and the lights would go on.
Dana, what brings fulfillment in your life?
Family, my wife, God, doing things for others, talking positive things. I used to draw these pictures. I know Scott's got one. Those weren't always positive pictures,
Yeah, they're really, really wild and cool, though.
Yeah.
Well, everything you just mentioned, look, you both mentioned the same thing, and I'm mentioning it too. What did we find fulfillment in? Helping others, doing something meaningful, being productive. It's all about what we export from ourselves and make the world a better place. That's what becomes fulfilling. And that takes a lot more work and effort. It's a lot more selfless. It's a lot less selfish. And so we all agree on this. Now, you also mentioned, which is a good segue, God. Indeed, I'm a spiritualist. This next section we're going to listen to is spirituality and recovery. Now, while it is within the Project Addiction book and course, and it is called Spirituality in Recovery, you will hear by listening to this that it's not really about recovery necessarily at all. When I say recovery, it's for the book and it's for this course. It's addiction focused, but personally, what I mean by that is recovery from your desires, from your failings, from toxic thinking, failing as a being, as a human being. And again, Teilhard de Chardin, that I quote so often, I am not a human being having a spiritual experience. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience.
Yeah.
We need to remember this, because this is where we find fulfillment. And so, and again, I don't want to preach spirituality or religion to people. So I created spirituality in recovery, not religion in recovery, to appeal and hopefully invite people in to consider this as an option to solve problems, find comfort, find joy, find meaning in their life. And so wasn't a chance, it wasn't coincidence that pleasure versus fulfillment was followed by spirituality and recovery. Now, again, when I wrote Spirituality and Recovery, I assumed it was going to be a this is a big book, and it covers everything in detail. Every drug, every behavior has its own chapter. So it's not like, here's about recovery. It breaks down all the recovery process in book 1. It breaks down all the recovery methods in book 2. Then it breaks down all of the drugs and behaviors in book 3. Each one has its own chapter. Rather than just, hey, here's how you deal with addiction. Here's how you deal with alcohol addiction. Here's how you deal with heroin addiction. They're not the same animal. They're not the same thing at all. As dope fiends ourselves, we were both tweakers. We did mostly methamphetamine. And then in that culture, heroin addicts are different animals than meth heads. They're completely different animals. They don't hang out together. They don't. We know each other, but we don't speak the same language. We're into different things, and that's why this course and book has its own chapter for every drug and behavior, sex, shopping, and the spirituality and recovery. As a spiritualist myself, I also found solace, comfort, words can't even grasp how essential my spirituality has been in my own recovery, not just from a drug addiction, but as a human being, recovery from being a toxic animal piece of garbage, lying, cheating, all that kind of stuff. Spirituality has been essential in all those things. And so I wanted to create something. I thought when I started to write this, because I'm a spiritualist, that's the meaning of my life. And so I thought I'm going to end up creating this like 800-page chapter just on that alone, because that's all that really matters. And I was surprised when I wrote it that it went really quick. And when I was done, I was like, I finished the last word and I was like, that's it. Like, there's nothing more to say on this. So how about we go ahead and give that a listen to?
Spirituality and recovery. Why is a raven like a writing desk? Said the Mad Hatter. I haven't the slightest idea, said Alice. Lewis Carroll, Alice in Wonderland. God is extreme. God is so far beyond our intellect, reason, or senses that a powerful, phenomenal experience is often required to gain insight and understanding of Him. Him is a conventional term. We'll assume God is genderless. Without such an experience, we simple humans are so easily distracted by the features of this material world that we can be oblivious to a truly great, peaceful, and absolute presence. Human beings are stubborn. You'll find no atheists in foxholes. It is an aphorism implying that everyone finds God when they are faced with the inevitability of their death. When faced with our own mortality, an innate need to live on pervades our consciousness, and we become desperate to make sense of our lives. Is sudden faith in a spiritual entity irrational thinking brought on by desperation? Or does the intensity and magnitude of our mortality coming fully into focus make us totally vulnerable and accepting? Vulnerable is synonymous with innocence, and innocence is synonymous with humility. Desperation forces us to abandon the sense that superficial and material needs are critical to our identities and fulfillment. They suddenly seem small and unimportant. In this vulnerable desperation, we are like children, raw and uncomplicated, innocent and honest. It takes this true level of true, honest sincerity to even begin to experience the grace of the divine. "Suffer the little children unto me" is a quote from Jesus in the Gospels that refers to the state of innocence that is needed to experience God's love. His love is always present and omnipresent, yet we are largely incapable of perceiving it as we cling to our desires, our pride, and our sense of self. Grace surrounds us always, and it is merely our own imperfections and limitations that obstruct our perception of it. To have the spiritual experience, we need to be raw, innocent, vulnerable, and most of all, humble. When a person tells me about an extraordinary good experience, like winning the lottery, they often praise God for His grace and intervention. It is common to see an athlete score a goal and thank God. My overly inquisitive mind can't help but wonder if this means God is against the other team. I mean, if He favored one team or player scoring or winning, doesn't that imply that He's against the other team? Isn't that contradictory to God's nature, which is to love indiscriminately and unconditionally? When people survive, persevere, or experience something exceptionally favorable, it seems easy to acknowledge God's involvement. Yet, when they experience misfortune and adversity, He is either not acknowledged at all or is invoked only for salvation or rescue. The truly spiritual personalities of history were mindful and grateful to God all the time, not only when extraordinary things occurred. Spiritual personalities are ever mindful and conscious of God's presence in their lives, and they recognize that everything occurring is extraordinary. When Francis of Assisi was set upon by robbers and beaten within an inch of his life and thrown into a ditch to die, he began singing God's praises, completely mindless and uncaring of his broken, injured, and dying state. He was oblivious to his condition, simply forgetting about it as he began to ponder God, which evoked him to spontaneously sing loudly and cheerfully. This singing got a passerby's attention, but Francis cared not a bit about being rescued or saved. He was completely absorbed in a devotional state of consciousness. He was 100%, totally, and completely happy as he lay there, physically dying. All of the historical saints were absorbed in devotional consciousness, and most of them were thought to be insane by their contemporaries, since they sang, danced, and acted so unconventionally that it was hard to accept them by societal standards. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in India in 1400s, St. Francis of Assisi in the 1100s, Gautam Buddha in 500 BC, and many other spiritual personalities had followers and devotees, but were mostly shunned and thought of as controversial, radical, and even insane by many of their contemporaries. It is now understood and believed that these personalities were in such a high state of God consciousness that they were blissful and ecstatic in ecstasy. Being blissful will make you seem a bit weird to a culture whose values are material success, health, and mundane happiness. Even those seeking spiritual happiness are rarely spiritually evolved enough to respect and appreciate true states of ecstatic spiritual consciousness when witnessing them. What's God? So, what or who is God? If we agree that God exists, we'll need to agree on some definitions to his nature. Omnipresent, omniscient, eternal, infinite, perfect, exponential bliss. We cannot truly conceptualize these qualities as they are far beyond our comprehension. We have limited material minds, and God exists so far beyond the material that we simply do not have the equipment to even understand the divine beyond a crude concept. We use words that express or mean things, but they're merely words used on an ineffable subject. Similarly, when a pregnant woman tries to describe what it's like to be pregnant to a man or a woman who's never been pregnant, the best she can do is provide metaphors to express the experience. As she does so, the listener gives facial expressions of recognition and says, I see, yes, I get it. But she knows they cannot possibly truly get it. To discuss the God and faith thing, we will use words and metaphors to attempt to get as close as our puny little human minds can get. Omnipresent, everywhere at once, in all places at all times. Our existence is spot existent, meaning we exist in a single spot at any given moment. But God's presence is omnipresent. Now we have the definition, but truly try to imagine being everywhere all at once. Can't really do it, huh? Makes your brain start to hurt. Omniscient, has awareness and total understanding of absolutely everything. Everything you think, feel, and do, and that goes for the entire other 7 billion people on the planet, and even the animals, ants, and other insects too. This includes everything that has ever happened, everything that can happen, and everything that ever will happen. We exist in a state of eternal present, meaning we can imagine a future and we remember a past, but we always exist in the now. The past and the future are remote and abstract. Eternal. There is no start or finish. Something eternal has always been and always will be. Literally, always, we cannot relate. Infinite. Absolutely no boundary or limit. Combine the first three together and you get infinite. Something infinite has no beginning or end to its presence or being. Not because it is too expansive to calculate, but because it is neither large nor tiny. It is absolutely beyond even the concept of space or measurement. Space does not apply to it. It is neither hot nor cold, nor young nor old. It is all and everything all at once. Perfect. Perfect, by definition, is not imperfect and cannot possibly have even a single imperfect quality by any standard. Perfect is not open to opinion or perspective. It is absolute. It is impossible to say what perfect is. The best we can do is say what it is not. God is bliss. This is a feature of being totally perfect because it is not possible for anything perfect to be anything less than. We'll use the example of water again. Water is wet, not partially or somewhat or sort of or kind of. It is wet. It is perfectly wet because wet is its nature. Now, water is perfectly wet, but it is not perfect because wet is all it is. To be perfect, it needs to be all other things as well as itself. God is not a part of all things, but is all things. Even simultaneously, He is perfectly wet and perfectly dry and perfectly everything else too. Perfect everything is synonymous with being bliss, not blissful, because the full part implies possession, and God doesn't possess anything as He already is absolutely everything. Exponential. God's blissful quality is exponential. Exponential is something that increases and expands upon itself and by itself. As it expands, its own increased mass activates expansion to an even bigger mass, which goes on and on. It is self-perpetuating. God's bliss, His personality, and all His qualities are ever increasing. This is not a book about spirituality or religion, so this section is merely to encourage spirituality as one of the many modalities we can use in recovery. Spiritually minded people will always feel it is a cornerstone of their recovery and success and will not require any encouragement here. However, people with dominantly scientific, logical, and practical backgrounds may not gravitate easily to spirituality, and this section is presented to encourage spiritual exploration and experiment. As with every strategy, absolutely everything should be evaluated and considered before it is rejected, and hopefully at least one or a combination of several of them will contribute to overall progress and success. Cultivating spirit. Whether spirituality is a consistent feature of our lives or it isn't, what follows are ways to begin or enhance this consistency. It makes no difference where we are in spiritual practice, as the steps and practices are the same for everyone at every stage of spirituality. The only difference between novices and veterans is the inner experience and how well they may perform their practice. The practice actions are nearly the same for everyone. In the same way, both a young football player and a professional player both kick the ball when it comes. The only real difference is the results, as a professional player may kick a goal and a new young player may kick the ball and miss a lot. The basic function and action is the same for both: kick the ball. However, seasoning and experience make all the difference. The same with spirituality. We get better at it and have a better experience with it when we practice more. Adjust your expectations, as it definitely takes time to experience and have awareness of spiritual benefits. The incentives are clear. Over time, our inner experience should be an increase of the following: peace, fulfillment, wholeness, compassion and sympathy, humbleness, devotion, spiritual love, which is qualitatively different than any form of worldly love. Spiritual exercise and commitment are not religion specific. The main feature and quality to cultivate spirituality is simple: devotion. Feeling gratitude and appreciation for the divine is what devotion is. When we feel truly and sincerely grateful and appreciative for anything, we have an inner need to serve it. Spiritual service is done in any of three ways: action, material, and emotional. Action is to practice your spiritual path with some commitment and discipline. Church on Sundays or as often as you can, even if it is only one Sunday a month. Regular meditation and or prayer. Try to discipline yourself to have routine, i.e. every evening before dinner, or 10 minutes or every morning for 30 minutes before coffee. The rearranging of other responsibilities and duties to practice is an act of spiritual devotion, as you are saying to the divine that your spiritual growth and commitment is something you will rearrange things for. God is listening to that message, and He sees it, and it draws Him closer. Read your spiritual books, scriptures, poetry, stories, or any material that causes you to be spiritually conscious. Watch a speech or a presentation, or even a movie that is focused on spiritual ideas and concepts. Be conscious of the messages in these actions and don't settle for merely being entertained by them. Whether we are meditating or watching a movie, the essential part is to try to be mindful of the divine while doing it. Thinking of God with gratitude for all His powers, virtues, and involvement is just one way to be spiritually conscious. But we can also think of how God is mystifying and how we don't really understand Him or even know what to think. Thinking of the divine in any way is better than not thinking of the divine. Material service can be charitable work or simply being gracious, sensitive, kind, or polite to others. We can volunteer to help our church or spiritual center, or we can donate money or bring some food. The spectrum is wide, and it matters more what our heartfelt intention is. If a poor man puts a nickel in the donation cup at a church and it's all he has, it is equal to the $100 given by a rich man, so long as both are given with sincerity and devotion. Both of these donations exceed the spiritual devotion of the man who gives $100,000 merely to get praise or to feel important. It is the intention that makes an action valuable, not the action itself. It's the thought that counts. A material action is converted to a spiritual action by intent. Any material action done with the hope of pleasing or serving God becomes devotional and spiritual. A good action without God in mind is merely a good action. Sweeping the floor is converted to a spiritual act if it is done with God in mind while it's being done. Emotional devotional. Emotional devotional service is thinking of the divine affectionately. Longing for spirituality or desiring to be more capable and spiritually evolved is spiritual devotion. Longing for the divine and spiritual experience is a way of expressing your love. It isn't possible for you to miss something without craving its association. If I miss my son or my girlfriend, it's because I love them, and longing is a manifestation of that love. If no one ever missed us, we would feel sad and unwanted. Longing for the divine is a highly evolved virtue. I can testify that the more you think of the divine and the more you long for it, the closer the divine comes to you, and the closer you are to it. When I miss my loved ones, it is bittersweet. It is painful to be separated from them, but simultaneously brings me closer emotionally to them. Because they are human beings with material minds, they are unaware of my longing for them. But God is omniscient, so He knows you are longing for Him. Go to church. Go to a meditation center that puts emphasis on God. Take time to pray and meditate. Do your chores or work, and every hour pause and think of the wonder, the majesty of the divine. Eat dinner, play a game, clean the dishes, ride your bike. It makes no difference what you do. If you have your mind even remotely thinking of the divine, you are doing a spiritual practice, and practice makes perfect. God does not hate or inflict pain. He is unconditional, absolute love. Try to imagine that. Truly unconditional. Some tried and tested practices. Be grateful to be aware of your faults and defects. Be thankful to have the intellect to consider your faults and the willingness to acknowledge and try to work on them. When thoughts come to mind of how afflicted you are and how painful life can be, remind yourself that if not for God's grace, it would be worse. If I do not learn or grow from my suffering, it is a waste. Suffering is a teacher. Be grateful He is teaching you. Set your phone or watch alarm to go off every half hour or so as a reminder to think of the divine, even if it's simply a superficial awareness for just a moment. Dedicate your actions, eating, sleeping, walking to the divine, simply taking a moment to acknowledge divine presence and commit whatever you are doing or about to do to the divine. Again, it makes no difference if it seems superficial or not. Having God in mind during an action is all that matters. It makes no difference what religion or philosophy you adhere to, so long as you adhere to the divine principle that derives it and you do it with sincerity and devotion. Follow your religion's rules or your philosophy's instructions as closely as you can, but most of all, do it with an inner desire to be closer to and to know the divine better. Beg the divine to reveal itself to you in your mind or emotions. Even demand it. Try to resist the impulse to ask God for a relief of a particular set of circumstances or problems. If the divine reveals itself in your heart and mind, it won't make a difference whether those conditions exist or not. You'll be so content within. For example, say you ask a guy who's stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic why he's smiling so much, and he says, "You kidding? I just won 10 grand in the lottery." He does not care and is not perturbed by the traffic outside because he's content and happy within his mind. The outside world matters less, or maybe not at all, if we are truly, truly happy within our spirit. Refrain from asking God to intervene on your life circumstances and ask Him to assist your ability to be aware of His presence. It's not about Him revealing Himself. He is omnipresent and is not hiding. He does not need to reveal Himself. We need to remove the material perceptions in our way. Ramakrishna Paramahansa was a spiritually enlightened man at the turn of the century with no education, who could not read or write, and yet he had spiritually inspired hundreds of intellectuals during his life. Ramakrishna had contracted brain cancer that was killing him and eventually took his life. He was asked by one of his disciples, "Master, you are enlightened and can call on God to spare you all the suffering in an instant, so why don't you?" He answered, "Why would I take my mind from loving God for even a moment for something so insignificant?" He was so absorbed in his love for God, he was ecstatic. Brain cancer and painful physical suffering was not worth even pausing in his devotional love for God. For him, if he even paused in loving God for a moment, that would be true suffering. His body and brain discomfort were insignificant in comparison. Like St. Francis being left for dead in the ditch, singing out God's praises, they were both so absorbed in loving God they could not think of anything else. You may have noticed that there is no clinical or practical recovery discipline here. It is not necessary to put our spirituality in the context of recovery. If we are spiritually fulfilled, we will desire nothing, not even and especially drugs.
If you like what you hear, follow or subscribe to this podcast to get more from Pry Open Your Third Eye.
Project Addiction is $325 for 6 months of treatment. Your first 7 days of Project Addiction treatment course is absolutely free. You do it from home every day, by yourself, with your family or spouse or other. You don't get exiled into a facility or leave your life. You keep working, living, and evolving as you learn how to solve your addictions, habits, and unwanted behaviors. And it's guaranteed. Guaranteed. That's how much confidence I have in it, and that's how successful it is to the Project Addiction recoverers across the U.S. and abroad. Check out the testimonials. Finally, it's time to no longer be a problem. Finally, it's time to be a part of the solution. Go to life-mind.com for your treatment solution. That's life-mind.com. Your first 7 days of Project Addiction treatment course is absolutely free. Project Addiction is $325 for 6 months of treatment. You do it from home every day, by yourself, with your family or spouse or other. You don't get exiled into a facility or leave your life. You keep working, living, and evolving as you learn how to solve your addictions, habits, and unwanted behaviors. And it's guaranteed. Guaranteed. That's how much confidence I have in it, and that's how successful it is to the Project Addiction recoverers across the U.S. and abroad. Check out the testimonials. Finally, it's time to no longer be a problem. Finally, it's time to be a part of the solution. Go to life-mind.com for your treatment solution. That's life-mind.com.
Jump in real quick and comment on something. First of all, this was not called religion in recovery. It's called spirituality in recovery. And as you can see, I did not make it denominational. I use the word divine instead of Allah or God very often. I use the concept because I'm not trying to exclude anyone. I'm trying to include everyone. And as it says, regardless of what path or religion you choose or what resonates with you, the importance that's universal to all of them is devotion, love, connection. And so I'm trying to find the unifying principles within these concepts that we can all relate to. And again, as a counselor, I work with people from all different religions. Mormonism, Judaism, Christians, Muslims, all different types. And I got along with all of them because I always focused on and was able to direct the conversations about spirituality to the divine, to God, to love, rather than dogmas. So this area was very well crafted and very challenging to craft, to do this in such a way that didn't alienate or encourage or propagate one specific path or religion, speak about the universal concepts. So I want to share that real quick. And also real quick that, by the way, there's a part of that I left out that I don't know why I did. St. Francis, when he was left in the ditch, he wasn't just singing the praise of God. He was literally just got so absorbed in thinking about God that he became so happy that when these two men came to pull him out of the ditch, he got mad at them because they were interrupting him. He literally was like, "Get away from me. What are you doing? Like, let me alone." And he was dying in a ditch because he didn't want to be bothered. He was in an emotional state. He was like, "Why are you bothering me?"
Right.
Saved his life. So, and again, as you can see that being inclusive, I evoke St. Francis, a Catholic saint, Ramakrishna Paramahans, a Hindu saint, and many personalities that cover the spectrum. One, and I hope that people can see that, again, the universal unifying factors that they all share rather than their differences. And that's in my spiritual work and as a counselor and teacher and mentor to many people, I've strived to do just that. Rather than discuss the differences between religions and paths, I talk about the unifying principles that they all share. So, Chloe, do you have a reaction to spirituality and recovery and what you just heard there? We always get a little paranoid, don't we? Because it's such a hot topic. Has a stigma. That's why I use divine, the divine. Indeed, as you point out, these were not accidental. Again, trying to be inclusive and religion and politics. Those are the two areas you do not discuss at the dinner table because they're so divisive in so many different ways. And again, the weird thing is politics I can see, but again, spirituality, what I've found is that there is, again, common bonds, no matter which religion you are in. If people are truly and sincerely involved with them on a spiritual level, again, there's universal common bonds that they can all share that are inclusive rather than exclusive. This is the unifying principle. And yes, as you mentioned, it was kind of well crafted. I was very cautious to try to explain what this was kind of designed for. Again, it's spirituality and recovery, not religion and recovery. The difference, of course, being that one's more formal, organized, and dogmatic, which, as you said, even the word God has a stigma to it. And I grew up with some of that too, thinking like, I don't want to hear that word. People say the universe. And I'm like, as a spiritual, I'm like, the universe is stars and moons and it's a material thing. That's not an appropriate term either. But here I am getting picky about their term, you know? And I'm doing the same kind of thing. So we need to be more open-minded, forgiving, and tolerant of whatever people need to use to gravitate towards. And again, what this section is for. It's just, as you point out, which I think is very important, and thank you for pointing out that this is just one section of the entire process and solution course and addiction retreatment course I've offered one little section, spirituality and recovery. We've also, again, got 12 steps, recovery centers, rehab, all these different modalities that you can use to enhance your recovery and to move it along. It's just one of many. Dana, give us some of your thoughts.
I'm like Chloe. I don't go out, and I mean, when I first got saved, I was all over the place about God with all kinds of people.
I remember.
But you know, then you start to realize and grow and mature in God. I mean, when you go out there and start blabbing off to everybody when you first get saved, it's kind of an immaturity in God. But as you grow and mature, you start hearing from God more instead of using your own, kind of like being a God for God when you're going out and trying to tell everybody about God. Maybe God doesn't want you to do that. Maybe that will, like she said, turn people away from Him.
It typically does. It does seem to.
And so as I matured in Him, He would lead me to the people. He would spiritually, divinely lead me to the people that He wants me to speak to. Because you can't just speak to everybody and anybody, because they'll get offended, or they'll, like the atheist, I don't believe in God. God is the only reason why I'm sober and clean. It wasn't nothing I did. I've tried rehabs. I tried a lot of things, and nothing failed me. I failed me.
Yeah.
Because counselors, they can help. The only reason why people fall back is because they fail themselves. Addiction is a hard thing.
Yeah, as a counselor, I'm leading them. That's that. All I am is like a Sherpa. I'm just leading. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your guidance,
Yeah, that's it. I'm a guy.
and it's up to the individual to grab on.
Yeah. If I may, as a counselor, I like the field of dreams axiom, the quoting that, build it and they will come. When I went into private practice, which no one had ever done before, I mean, I wasn't a college graduate or anything like that. You don't do that. And I was like, well, I got an office because I'm a hypnotherapist. Let me give it a shot and see what happens.
Right.
And it blew up and I became very successful. And build it and they will come. My attitude was, I can't go and seek them, open my doors, open it up, get the invitation, and let people know that I'm here, and let them let the God power bring whoever I can help and who needs me in particular. And that's how my career and my life as a servant has been ever since. That I often feel that people are brought to me because they need a specific brand or type of treatment, help, counsel, advice, and mentoring that only I can give. And indeed, that's kind of a paired up. I think that we get evoked. And again, I don't want to, again, we're all aware of the stigma. And as you mentioned, Dana, that yes, and that, kind of reminded me also, as you mentioned, that when you first feel you got saved, that you want to go preach to the world, go teach the gospels, right? And that turns a lot of people off. The born agains have a very bad stigma for a reason, because they're very judgmental and they push people away. But in the same way, as dope fiends, we both know this. AA and 12-step were the exact same way. It's a very cult-like mentality. When you saw someone who was a 12-step, you'd be like, "Get the hell away from me," because they would want to preach to you and bring you in. It was very cult-like. As a matter of fact, I point out in Project Addiction the cult-like mentality of AA and the 12-step process. And I also put on, I have two sections of that area that says the good and the bad and the ugly of the 12-step programs, and they wonderful things. But again, there's this cult-like mentality where it's like, it's our way or the highway, nothing else. And that kind of puts people off,
Right.
So kind of it. So indeed, we all three seem to agree that as we spiritually mature, I don't preach to anybody. I talk about it and people are willing. And if they want to know more, they can, but I'm not going to go in the head with it. If you want to know more, come a little bit closer. And if you don't, that's fine too. I'm here. And again, I think that's what I found. And I'm sure you have too. That's what draws people in. The fact that you're not forcing them or trying to coerce them or manipulate them or sell them something.
It sounds cultish.
Yeah, then they start to trust you and feel like, they could, and that's what it's about. That's about being real.
You can befriend a person and gradually, and if they don't want to click, then they can, they'll do their own thing.
And it's the same with anything. I don't care if you're into baseball or anything that you're into.
Right. Exactly.
The way to kind of invite people in is just to invite them. And so as a vegetarian vegan, I don't shame people and argue with them about their omnivorous diets. I don't like it. I have my strong beliefs about that. My way to convert people to vegan, vegetarian, or plant-based diet is not to guilt and shame them. I invite them to lunch. I invite them to one of my places that serves only vegetarian, vegan food, so they can see and taste and see how good it is.
It is
That's
good.
very rewarding. And so, or I make them a lunch, and let them make their own decisions. And I've had many people that converted to a plant-based diet because, again, I didn't preach. I simply invited them to lunch. Every time we got together and we pick a place, and I'd say, well, if it's up to me, I'd like to go here because, that's more appropriate for my diet. I think you'll like it too, And again, when we share rather than force, share the things that are good, that are enlightening, illuminating, share the things that are warm, no matter what it is. I don't care if it's the sport you love, the movie you love, the food you love, or the religion you love. When we share this with warmth and heart, then people gravitate to that. That's what they're gravitating to. And that invites them in. That gives them a chance to sample it. And again, that's kind of what the intention of this recording that we just saw is about. It's, again, not denominational. It's not religion in recovery, spirituality. To simply introduce the concepts and the idea for those who might resonate with. And those who don't, then you read the next chapter. Maybe you want to go to me, maybe something else will work, but this is also an option you can have. And then again, that's all I'm saying in this section was this is also an option. Now, obviously, as a spiritualist, I'm tempted to say, you need this. This is all you need. That's mostly what I believe too, but you can't do that. When people are ready for it, you got to invite them and embrace them. That's right. So we're all agreed on that. That's pretty cool. So again, this is, as you pointed out, Dana, the spirituality maturity as you begin to mature in your spirituality. And I also, as a public speaker and workshopper and mentor and all that, I have a different public personality. I'm kind of on the spot. And so it's tempting to preach, again, recovery, addiction control, and I don't like doctors and PhDs and medications and all that. I have very passionate feelings about all that. But I've got to be very careful as a public personality. And in my office, I have my own spiritual icons and images and things around my office that are meaningful to me and my tradition and my spiritual path. That is very exclusive. I'm not just following anything and everything. I have my spiritual path and my religion that I'm adhered to. And if someone wants to know, they can know it. But if they don't, that's fine too. I'm not cramming down anybody's throat. And so what I found is that my discretion is, again, I'm not going to lie about it, what I am or who I am. But I'm not either am I going to force it upon you. If you want to participate, you look around, you ask a question, what this means, and you want to talk about it, we can. But I'm not requiring that. And again, same thing with my recovery treatments. There's all the things you can use. Use the ones, not just one. Use as many as you can. Use all of them. Take pieces of each one and put them together. Whatever's going to save your life and save your ass, use it, And again, we're not just talking about drug addiction recovery. We're talking about happiness and fulfillment. What's going to work to make you feel valuable and have fulfillment in your life? Because again, as I was often asked, not just in addiction recovery, as a counselor covering a spectrum of behavioral disorders and issues and self-improvement, people are asking me all the time on podcasts and TV and radio, asking me what's wrong with people. What is truly wrong with people? And I say, because they don't know why they're not happy. They feel like they could be happy. They got family, they got the house, they got all these things, and yet they feel like something is missing.
Yeah.
All of us feel like something is missing because we're not feeling fulfilled. We have pleasure, we have luxury, we have stability, we have all of the security, all the things that we need, and yet people are coming to me as a counselor and they're saying, I'm not happy. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't even know why I'm here. My life is fine, but I feel like something's missing. To spiritualists, we realize that something missing is very likely God. Very likely a relationship, an association with something divine and spiritual. But
yeah, it's emptiness.
So you could say that pleasure versus fulfillment, that first 5 minutes, and spirituality and recovery, fulfillment and spirituality are synonyms. What I've done there is truly, I mean, the exact same thing. You need fulfillment to feel whole and complete, and that is in spirituality. And if you're ready for spirituality, go there. But if you're not, then just go with fulfillment. You know, whatever's going to make you feel like you have purpose and value.
Yeah.
So,
When I was before I knew God, and I can't say that I really know God, because God is, like you said,
well, we know that we can't know God, but yeah,
God
I
is
hear you.
He's all and He's everything, like you said in your video. So we can only know God as much as we know God. There's a whole lot more to God to know than what we know already.
Yeah, all we can really discuss, we can talk about what we don't know to talk about what we do know. What we
Yeah.
don't know is we can only tell what's perfect by saying what's not perfect.
But before God, you know, before God, we have a certain feeling in us that's not peaceful. In us, some kind of
Something's
nature
missing.
that's not peaceful in us. But for me, I'm not saying for anybody else, but just for me, I'm going to put Jesus into this because He's also God. So when I came to Jesus, all that emptiness and that strange, unpeaceful feeling disappeared. So it's not a peace like you can see around, or you can't touch it either. It's a certain kind of peace that you feel a spiritual relief inside of you.
Yeah, as I said in that clip there, that a relationship and an experience with divine love, which is qualitatively different than any worldly or familial love. We all
Right.
think love is love, but we can say as spiritualists that when you experience a divine love, it is qualitatively different. You can't describe it, you can't explain it. It's something you know when you feel it. But again, it's kind of like many drugs and many other human experiences that are not divine. They're ineffable. Ineffable simply means it cannot be put into words, cannot be explained. The only way you can know it is to experience it. That's the only way you
Exactly.
can. And so, and again,
Exactly.
divine love, ecstatic states, you can't describe them. And again, if a child comes to you and says, well, what do you mean by being in love? Like, what's it mean to feel? I've been hearing about this. What does it feel like? What does it mean to be in love? You say, I can't. How will you know when you're in love? And you will tell somebody, if you've never been in love before, you can't know. But I'll tell you this, when it happens, you'll know. You're like,
Exactly.
you tell me that. No, I want to know how will I know? Trust me, you'll know. You'll absolutely know when it happens. You'll have no mistake about it. How will I know if I don't even know what it is? Trust me, you'll know. Same thing. Divine love is qualitatively different. And when you experience it, you'll know the difference. You'll see, oh my God, this is completely different than familial love. And look, my love for my son as a parent, Chloe, your love for Claire as a mother, love for parents to their children, it is exponential as well. It is unconditional virtually. It is ineffable. And yet it pales in comparison. And again, love for your parents, love for your lover, love for your child, all love, all very profound and very intense and very wonderful, but they're all qualitatively different. I can't say that my love for my child is less than or greater than my love for my romantic partner. There is quantities there, but they're qualitatively just completely, they're both love, but they're completely different animals, you know? I love good food. Not the same thing. I don't mean it quite the same way, you know? And so again, we have these qualifications that we know when we experience them. And again, what I want, hopefully, people to walk away from this spirituality and recovery section is, and fulfillment versus recovery, fulfillment and recovery. Pleasure versus fulfillment is to see the difference. That indeed, as you're pointing out as well and validating, that feeling that something is missing. I mean, I'm getting tears when I say it out loud, when I think, because the pain that I've seen people coming to me for years and years and years, coming to my office. I can't tell how many times people coming in and saying, I'm like, so what can I do for you? And they're like, I don't even know why I'm here. I read your editorials in the magazine. I had a feeling of reaching out to you. I don't even know why. And eventually what we find within a few minutes in discussion is that they feel that something is missing and they don't know what it is. They don't know what it is and how to define it, but they feel that something is missing. And again, what this always is because you don't feel fulfilled. And that can also be, and usually can lead to, because you don't spiritually feel something that's fulfilling there. We can't just have pleasure. And again, people are coming to me as a counselor because their lives are fine. They got cars, they got money. I lived in a pretty good neighborhood, pretty good community. They got cars, they got money, they got comfort, they got family, all that stuff. And yet they feel like something is missing. And that something has got to be identified. And again, the true cause of addiction came from that, the fulfillment, because that something that is missing is we're seeking something that's going to make us feel fulfilled. And if we don't have that, we're going to substitute that with easy to find pleasures and vices because they're easy and convenient and quick. It's never going to end well.
No, not at all.
I wanted to touch upon something that Dana, you mentioned when you said, when I found God, and then you said, well, I don't know if I really know God. And I think that it's hard to put it into words because there's this void that gets filled when we seek spirituality that we can't quite put our finger on, but we know it's being fulfilled. Yet, the more we know, the more we realize that we don't know anything at all.
That's right.
And that's this sort of state of complete vulnerability. And as you mentioned in the video, Scott, vulnerability is synonymous with innocence, which is synonymous with humility. And then that brings us to gratitude, and which comes right back to vulnerability and this place of knowingness. And I can't really describe it any deeper than that. And when I do, then I'm just going in circles and people are like, what are you talking about? How do you know that you know? And I try to really figure everything out. That's kind of possibly one of my addictions, is to figure it all out. And so it becomes really a challenging place for me to sit back and say, I don't have it figured out, but I know that I'm onto something here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's worth contemplating.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't know God. The only thing you can know, the more you know about God, the more you realize you don't know anything. And again, what was surprising to me as I wrote this chapter that I thought was going to be like, how am I not going to go on this big, long diatribing, preachy thing when I feel this is a cornerstone of existence itself? How am I going to keep this as a part of the whole rather than just dominating everything? How can I describe the ineffable?
Sorry.
And what I think is God's grace is within that little 19-minute video. And what's in this book, it does describe God. Again, we cannot. God is ineffable, beyond words, beyond description, beyond knowing. And I've come about as close as you can. Omnipresent, omniscient, bliss. These handful of categories, eternal, infinite, concepts that are beyond our ability to perceive them or describe them. This is what God is. And again, we cannot describe God. We cannot know God. But what I was very pleased with as I wrote this and was able to share it and turn it into a video is that this is about as close as you can get. And again, it's not me speaking. I'm not telling you what God is. I'm telling you, as I said, if God is a real thing, then let's agree on some principles and define what it would be. What would God be if it exists? So just giving you the ideas. And I think the value of this section, that chapter, is just that. It's a lot of fun to be able to see, indeed, it ain't the complete story. It ain't the complete description. It can't be. But these defining principles, and listen, it's not that I invented them. Those bullet point principles, omniscience, omnipresence, eternal, infinite, bliss, etc. Exponential, that's a big one. Those bullet point principles, they're not my words. Those are indeed, I am quoting Torah, Gospels, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavatam. I'm quoting them. That's where it comes from. Those are my words at all. I simply paraphrase what they're all teaching. These are the things they all agree on, that if there is a God, which we definitely all three of us do agree, if there is a God, then this is how we would define him. That he has to have these principles: omniscient, present, perfect, exponential, ecstatic, etc. And this is what I was stunned by as I finished writing this chapter. Was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. That wasn't me that did that. Something channeled, something came through, and I was able, when I got done, I was like, and I went back to kind of rewrite it. And I'm like, this is going to take a long time to polish this up and you're describing God, for God's sakes. How are you going to do that? And I was like, wow, I did go through a rewriter too, but nothing major. And that's how I knew there was somewhat channeled, because I couldn't add anything or take anything away. Those features. And again, this is a way, I think, for agnostics and people new to the concepts to be able to define it and appreciate it and know what we're all talking about as best we can.
Yep.
I think the concept of being a vessel, and Dana, you brought that up before, and
Mhm.
you just described that, Scott, with how you came about writing this chapter. And I think that's key. Just being open. That's what a
Mhm.
vessel is just an
Yeah.
open container that's willing to hold something that's beyond us.
I tried to remove my ego in terms of self when writing about any of those things. Again, as a counselor, I can't be part of the equation. My ego and my sense of self, my id, cannot be present. I've got to be completely objective and to relate things in an objective way without my take on them, my influence. I'm simply trying to report to you the facts, ma'am. Nothing but the facts. The truth and the whole truth, nothing but the truth. That I'm just trying to give you the facts. Then you can decide. And that's what Project Addiction is. I'm not telling you use this recovery model, go to meetings, go to recovery center, go to RIA. I'm not telling you not to either. I'm saying here's what they are, here's how they work, here's what's wrong with them, here's what works about them. Take your pick. Again, when you go to a restaurant, you get out the menu. Some restaurants have these big giant menus. Taco Bell, for God's sake, has this wall of food above you, right? When you get right down to it, it's beans and cheese and a shell and some veggies, and that's it. And it's 5 or 6 items. Then they got this big wall. So I'm like, I'm out of here. I can't. I'm not going to sit here and look at this thing. It's overwhelming. And in a similar way, recovery for addiction and behaviors, we got all these options. And rather than tell you which one, I'm giving you all of them. So you can choose. I'm telling you all how they work and why they work and exactly what to do, how to use them properly. And then you can decide which ones are going to work for you. When you go to a restaurant, you look at a menu and you look and you see, well, and again, as a vegetarian, if I'm at a steakhouse, I know what I'm not getting, right?
Mhm.
I'm looking for the items that will fit my particular diet, right? What do I like? When you get a menu, you're looking for the things that resonate with you. What am I in the mood for? What makes me feel good? There's all these items on here to give you the options, and that's what we need. And we have the same sort of spirituality and religion as well. There's a lot of them, and I'm not saying some of them are really corrupt and bad and wrong. There's no doubt about it, and many of them are. We need to consider all the legit ones as something to consider. We don't truly know which ones are going to resonate with us. When I was a public servant and counselor, when I have a Muslim coming into me for help, I'm not going to preach to them about yoga paths or Christianity. I'm going to use their path and their religion to help them grow and evolve. That's all that's going to work anyway, you know? And again, rather than give them something new, I'm going to explore what they've got. And I'm going to slowly introduce all the different concepts for tolerance, acceptance, options, all that.
The common ground that we all meet at
And again, I think that this is what this video did is I'm discussing the common ground rather than say God or Jesus or Allah. I'm saying the divine. I'm giving you a blanket term that's rather generic. And I get that. And I don't like that too much either, but I'm depersonalizing. I'm making it more generic so that we don't shut people out. Everybody
Right.
that gets, and as I said in there, that people that are already spiritual, they're going to find this to resonate with, and they're going to be able to connect with it. But people that aren't, this is something that they can have as a gateway, as an entryway.
Hmm.
I hope this conversation can do just that. Just be a
I do too.
launching pad of common ground, so that
Yeah.
whoever you are out there, whatever it is you're contemplating in your life, that it can bring you closer to some fulfillment.
Yeah.
Project
And-
Addiction, all those options. Again, spirituality and recovery is just one option that maybe your savior, maybe it won't. It's just one option to consider. And so, and again, while I do anticipate a shift in Pry Open Your Third Eye podcast, I do anticipate a shift as we get a little bit more into deeper, more serious, more philosophical areas and more even spiritual. I'm always going to keep them somewhat separate. We talk about pleasure versus fulfillment. We talk about spirituality and recovery. We will have episodes and recording sessions that are clearly and purely about spiritual issues and topics and mythicalities, which I love, tarot, Kabbalah, Judaism, Christianity, all of them. And again, in an inviting and accepting kind of manner. And also philosophical, behavioral, anything that matters. We want to address all these areas and show that this can be done diplomatically, warmly, and without conflict.
Mhm.
Right?
I agree.
Then let's wrap it up. I want to say thank you, Dana, for being here. I hope you'll come back again soon. It's always a
Yep.
joy talking with you. I'm glad we're still such good friends. I feel a good bond with you. I look forward to talk. I don't like text people a lot and talk to people a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't hesitate. Like I've enjoyed interacting with you again, and it's fun. I enjoy it. So I'm glad to have you here. And Chloe, of course, as always, she and I talk a lot, and I'm glad to have you around too. So hopefully people will come back. This will wrap it up for this episode of Pry Open Your Third Eye, where we destroy ignorance and try to illuminate and enlighten you on many different topics and give you things to think about and challenge your thinking and feelings. All right.
All right.
Till next time. Until next time, leave your third eye open. Full episodes, services, knowledge, and all you'll ever need on scottspacky.com and life-mind.com.
Ocean collides with the sun.
If you like what you hear, follow or subscribe to this podcast to get more from Pry Open Your Third Eye.
Change your mind and change your life. Break bad habits, solve addictions from alcohol to ecstasy, shopping to sex. Solve anxiety, depression, confidence, and motivation. Find direction and purpose. Life is bright when it is good and we are living to our potential. Life is long and dull when our potential remains dormant. Your potential and purpose are already inside you and waiting for you. It doesn't need to be created. It needs to be uncovered and revealed. My services include live counseling, video courses, books and mentoring through email and text. Visit scottspacky.com for your options. Let's get started. Are you ready?